And you can look at desire as a two-sided coin. It's like the push-pull magnet. Like you're either pushing towards something, striving towards a goal, or you're pulling away from pain or unpleasant experience.
Here's a solution that can maybe solve a problem, but it doesn't really know what problem it wants to solve.
A rule of leverage is, if I were to lump it in with focus, is being clear on what you need to be doing.
All right, what's going on, everybody? We're back with another episode here at Thrive Local. Today's guest is my friend Riley McGhee, who is a business coach and leader who's proven how far clarity and determination can take you. Within less than 6 years, Riley went from being a broke college student to becoming chief operating officer of growing a mental health consultancy. Along the way, he's developed a passion for helping others navigate their own unique challenges and achieve meaningful growth. In 2019, Riley worked as a coach for high-pressure professionals like surgeons, sales leaders, and Olympians. And that experience eventually led him to that COO role for the mental health consultancy, where he scaled a small team into a thriving organization, growing their revenue threefold and the team from a staff of 2 to 10 with another dozen freelancers and associates. Now, Riley channels his expertise into helping coaches and consultants scale their impact. Known as the Clarity Coach, he provides the systems, frameworks, and perspective his clients need to succeed, with a focus on scaling impact as much as income. Riley, appreciate you being on the show. It's great to have you. And what's been going on? I know we've always had calls and it's always been really good conversation. So I'd love to catch up with you and maybe start with just sharing with the audience about what you're up to these days.
Yeah. Wow. What an introduction. I appreciate that. And in terms of what's new, I mean, business wise, I have a co-founder. For the first time, we merged about 6 months ago, as of this recording, and so we've been doing a lot behind the scenes to kind of pull things together, and then we're actually now sort of revamping based on like our feedback and what we've observed so far, sort of the content, I guess you'd say, of our program. We have an accelerator program that we run, and so we're redoing or revamping or updating, kind of streamlining that. And you might start seeing a little bit of content here and there from us on social media. We're starting to put some of that together, and a podcast and some little bits and pieces here. Nothing fancy, but just starting to get those gears turning.
How's it been, working with a co-founder? I know there's, and we're going to get into talking a lot more about leverage because that's a big part of what you do. And you've got a great program that's free, actually, that people can go through, called a leverage game, which we'll get into that. But I know partners can be a form of leverage. And I'm just curious how that experience has been for you in stepping into partnerships.
Yeah, well, I've kind of always, in a way, partnered. So going all the way back to, just as a coach, right? You're kind of a partner to begin with, at least a thought partner. And then when I started consulting in operations, I was sort of this coach, consultant, admin hybrid, techie. I was doing a little bit of everything, but I was like coach. And then also, hey, based on my expertise, this is what we should do. And then, hey, let me help you do some of those things. So in a way, it kind of felt like I've had partners in the past, but it was always, a customer to like that client relationship. So it wasn't quite the same. My first real experience was then when I was the COO. I was a stakeholder as well in that business, but still some hierarchy there. This is really the first true 50-50. We're on the same rung of the ladder kind of experience. And his name's Ped, and Ped was actually a client from years ago. So we kept in touch. We kind of came back to the same sort of niche space. Like we sort of arrived at the same destination at the same time. So when we started talking about pulling together, it was really the best way I've heard it put it is it has to be a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario, which kind of goes to leverage a little bit. But we talked through that from every angle you can think of, and it equaled 3 to us. So we decided to go in on that. And I think the best part has actually been, like, business aside, has been like our alignment on values. Just like, he's just a good dude and we enjoy working together. And I think if you don't have that, I'm not saying you can't make a business relationship work, but definitely helps. Is very it can be a distraction at times because we call them squirrels, like, just as if you're talking to a friend. But yeah, I think that has been just invaluable for me, at least, because I've always appreciated being in the space, having someone to kind of spar with.
Yeah, the value alignment is it's one of those things where you don't realize how important it is, at least in my experience, until either something blows up because of misalignment of values, which was my experience in the past, or I think if you've never had it and then you do have it and you realize how I think like you go back to that equation of 1+1=3. I think that value alignment is a way to kind of solidify that outcome for you even more, that you're going to get more out of the energy and effort that you put in when you're both aligned value wise. Tell me a little bit, like, what are your thoughts on, like, because that's leverage, right? It's like I'm able to get more output with the same, if not less, input of energy and effort. So if by partnering you can, instead of 1+1=2, that could actually elevate the outcome for you. Why does that, I guess, maybe get into the nuance of it? Like, why has that been true for you with partnership?
Well, there's kind of two levels to it. I mean, and the first, and admittedly, I think we're still kind of in to some extent, is because it's super fresh at this point. It's just 6 months. And for people listening, if they think 6 months is a long time, welcome to business. That is a blink of an eye. That is like, so I think on that level, I'm trying to think of some, like, when we've talked through, if we had a surplus of profit, like, how are we still paying ourselves versus how much are we investing in the business? Same page there. And then also, while we're investing in the business and cash flow is tight, and we're like not focused on marketing and bringing in new clients as much as we are focused on building the infrastructure and the behind the scenes, like, that takes cash and time and energy. How are we paying ourselves, and what are we prioritizing, through those scenarios? Same page there. Like, it's almost an after, like, we're just already on the same page. So that saves a lot of time versus, like, how much time and energy you chew up debating over, I don't know, who wants what or what direction strategically, or the vision, all those things. We've just always been aligned. And we spent a lot of time talking about that before we ever even merged. When you move beyond that and the things that we're working on, and what's exciting for me is that we're actually measuring some of this stuff. So we have, different roadmaps and workflows and metrics where we can see incremental progress in terms of, conversion rates at different pieces of kind of like the pipeline or the funnel, if you want to call it that. Even creating a new funnel, even having, like all the little nitty gritty details that go into building your business and building a sales pipeline and building the product and the content machine and like all of that stuff, and how you prioritize it. Those are the things that, A, being on the same page is helpful, but then B, that's where we can kind of divide and conquer, or if we need that extra support. So for example, right now, as we're revamping the program, my partner is very much the product guy. He's an instructional design specialist. He's done facilitation and workshops for decades for like Nike and Red Bull, like the big brands as well. That's definitely his MO, and yet it's a big lift. So I'm giving a hand and helping out with that part as well. So there's lots of little examples that I could point to where
so with like the product, I would imagine he's leading, maybe perhaps leading the charge on that, the strategy, maybe the kind of the bigger picture stuff, or maybe that's where you guys are collaborating, but he's leading more of the, I guess since that's a space that he comes from, you as a partner, it's like, hey, listen, I'm going to give you more autonomy, or like we're coming to agreement where this is where you're going to take more of the lead, but I'm here to be a support system for you in that regard. And maybe there's some things that you're doing in the business that you're taking the lead on that's more aligned with your specialization. But if there's some need for him to step in to kind of be a support agent for you over there, is that kind of the dynamic that you're experiencing, if I'm understanding correctly?
Yeah, exactly that. We kind of came in with the idea that we'd sort of even be more divided and conquered, that approach. But we found that there's a lot of things that we not only appreciate supporting, like getting a second pair of eyes on, but just when you're laying the foundations, it's like it can be hard work. And so to have that extra pair of hands and set of eyes is really useful, especially one that you trust and that and know, like, and trust. I mean, that is has been very valuable. And so as we push forward, a lot of the things that we're like projects that we're working on are kind of like the brick has been laid, the foundations there, and you keep building up. So we're really excited for looking at like Q1 2025, Q2, and just the next step. It's just you just kind of one brick at a time. You keep laying them down.
Yeah, the foundation is definitely heavy in the beginning, when you're getting started and you're getting everything put in place. But okay, well, let's shift over into talking about leverage and the leverage game. And I love because you've got the leverage game, which is a sequence of content that people can go through that you teach on how to apply leverage to your own business. And I like the first, because I'm a nerd too, and I can sense the nerdness here and getting into the equations and kind of I say that jokingly, but at the same time, it's like, I thought you did a really good job of illustrating the concept of leverage in a way with equation and using kind of the visual of the fulcrum, and you got the lever. But like, let's talk a little bit. Let's just kind of have this conversation and talk about leverage and really what that, like how you define it for the business owner and what that actually means.
So, there's 6 rules of leverage that we identified. And so we've revamped that, a few times, the leverage game it's now like a little mini course and community. I think we have got like 140-ish people in it at this point. It's really designed for more so like coaches and consultants, service-based. I mean, you could technically apply the rules probably to any business, but I'm not going to say, that's not my expertise. So I've always been in kind of the service coaching, counseling, consulting kind of world. And that's really what we're focused on. And so in terms of applying it to your business, the first 2 really stand out in terms of like describing leverage and then also like just being essential. And then the other 4 are like extra things that you can add in. So the first piece of leverage, like if you think of having, that like you're talking about the fulcrum and a lever that you're pulling on, that's, it's people talk about wanting like a balanced life and, having balance between like separation between like work and life and those kind of things. But what I find is that when I talk to most entrepreneurs, or especially entrepreneurs, they don't actually understand what it is they're describing. What they're describing is an incredibly unbalanced life. What you want is, like, if you want to work 4 hours a day and make 6 figures a year, or 4 hours of the 4-hour work week, you know what I mean? That is not balanced. That's not put one in, get one out. That's not trading time for money. That's not what that is. It's actually incredibly unbalanced, which means it's highly leveraged. So your time becomes increasingly valuable, more and more valuable, and you're not really trading time for money anymore. And so what are the components that allow, that transformation to happen? And the first rule of leverage that is a non-negotiable you have to have, we call it tapping into desire, which is kind of what our, the basis of our paid accelerator program as well. But it's really understanding what the market, first of all, who you are actually speaking to, that's the market. And then secondly, what the market actually wants. And you can look at desire as a 2-sided coin. You're either, pushing, it's like the push-pull magnet. Like you're either pushing towards something, striving towards a goal, or you are pulling away from some sort of, pain or unpleasant experience. And they're typically tied together. There's some sort of, when you contextualize what desire is, there's usually an A and a B, 2 sides of it. And a lot of really customers. Yeah. Everything. I mean, my original background, like I learned in my master's degree in counseling, what was it called? It was a very client-centered, person-centered therapy. That's what it was called. But so we talk about a client-centric approach. And so you have to start, we had just posted this today, actually, saying a lot of people build their business backwards, where they talk about like they're offering what they want to do, what they're passionate about, and they got to find the right person for it. To completely backwards, the wrong way of doing it, because you're going to burn so much time trying to find the person, and you don't even know what you're looking for. Versus you go the other way around. Let's identify the desire, the goal, the pain. What is the problem we're solving first? And that leads into the second rule and all the rest. Like everything's built off of that. So you have to have that. If there is no desire, there's nothing to leverage. There's no nothing to like pull against. There's no focus on a business. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I mean, when it comes to, it's like follow your passion and chase your dreams, and it's like, yeah, but when I can think back through any success that I've had in business, it always like it ended up starting with just like, oh, hey, here's somebody that needs something solved in their life. There's like a problem they have, and you just answer the call and you solve the problem, and then all of a sudden that starts to snowball into opportunities that you never conceived of in your own head, because you didn't know until you actually connected with those people to really figure out what the actual problem was that they needed help, or what the desire was that they were looking for. Tell me a little bit more about, like, I mean, I know it sounds really simple. It's like, just go have some conversations, but like, is there anything that you would suggest for somebody to kind of go from 0 to 1 in that respect of being able to figure out what the desire is of the market?
Yeah, the simplest way is go talk to them. That's the easiest way to say it. But to unpack that, I mean, an analogy that we use quite often is we talk about the differences between a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. And so pretty much anything that's top-down, we just give that away for free, because that's what most of like if you talk to I don't know, an ad agency or a marketing agency, or there's so many other competitors or people in this space that promise you the world, and they say we're gonna give you 100 new leads or clients a day, or else I don't know, whatever their guarantee is. And a lot of that is dependent upon you fully understanding what the market wants. And so how do you actually know that? And that even calls in, I'm going to try not to get philosophical here, because it's like, how do you actually know, versus do you think you know? And so if you think you know, or you feel like you know what the market wants, that's top down. And so think of top down as like literally the top of like your head. Like it is, you are brainstorming, you are doing a worksheet exercise. And so for us, that's very much the compass. Like if I threw you into the woods and I said, you have to find your way home, it's useful to have a compass. It gives you a sense of direction. It gives you a sense of knowing. However, unless you're some super Boy Scout, Girl Scout, like I never was, I don't know if you're getting home with just a compass and like reading the moss on the trees. I mean, I feel like that's not going to be very effective. So what you really need is the bottom up approach. And we have a whole set of processes. And like, that's the work. That's where you're actually going out and talking to the market and engaging them in conversation, and, initiating conversations, and then trying to extract the data from that. And that serves as your map. And when you pair a compass with a map, now you actually can get somewhere. And also, like, one of the things we tell our clients is when you get through our program, you will have 100% confidence that you know exactly what your clients want. And that's because you are looking at a spreadsheet of information in front of you that is telling you, like, without a doubt, there's this old like study that's talking about, like, the things that you know. That's a very small circle. And then there's things that you don't know, which is a bigger circle. And then there's all the things that you don't even know you don't know. If that, I don't have other words to explain that, but that's what we're trying to, like, that's the big elephant in the room, is like, you think you know what the market wants, but if they're not buying your thing, you're probably not right.
So when you're having these conversations, is there anything, I'm trying to think of how to put this into some context, because I know I've had conversations with people before, and it's like, I won't even think they even know what they want. You know what I mean? And you're like, I'm not even sure, like, so I always think about, like, what are some like really good questions to ask somebody that can like pull that out of them, in that space?
Yeah, I mean, really, what you're talking about is like the levels of awareness. Is it, if
Yeah,
you've heard, right? Like
absolutely. Yeah, like problem aware, or they're not even aware at all, or they're solution aware. Yes, yeah.
So it goes unaware, problem aware, solution aware, and then
Yeah.
most aware, product aware. But the way that I don't think that we've heard anyone else talk about it this way. The way we think of that is even problem aware. Most people will pay for that. Like, for example, I have a rotator cuff injury, so my shoulder's been hurting. Before I knew that it was a rotator cuff injury, all I knew was that my shoulder hurts. So I'm not even really I know there's a problem. I don't know what the problem is. So I know I'm going to talk to my physical therapist to figure out what actually is going on here so I can stop being in pain and reach my goals of, my exercise goals and health goals, and et cetera. And so that's really the desire thing, right? We're shaping up a container to go from A to B. But to meet me where I'm at, all I know is I'm pain aware. And if you are targeting people that are unaware, it's a much larger population, but good God, is that going to take a lot of education and marketing dollars? That's difficult. And that's why you see like the big, the ads on TV for the Super Bowl and, people just shoving Pepsi products in your face. It's like, did you forget that you really want Pepsi? Because you probably didn't know until you saw this commercial.
Right.
But to pinpoint the pain, that's where most people, like, it's hard to not be pain aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're because you feel it. And that's why people will pay more for painkillers than for vitamins. Because you don't feel vitamin deficient. You feel like the pain that's a result of it. And so if we can unpack that, people's own words, how are they experiencing the problem, the consequences of the problem, the frustrations, the annoyances, and how do we contextualize that with where they're trying to get to, the goal, the ultimate desire, the dream outcome, whatever, those kinds of things, the skills, the knowledge, the attributes. That's really what we call the transformation spectrum. And that kind of goes across the levels of awareness. And so you have to meet people where they're at. And so the questions you're going to ask are going to be related to the pain and what they're feeling. And the other thing they're probably aware of, which is where they're trying to get to. And then you can start filling in and bridging the gap. And that's also how you're going to position yourself and your product, is the bridge between the gap.
So when you think about like the positioning piece, and because I think that's really important to unpack here a little bit, because there's competition and there's all these other different people that wants the business and wants to solve that problem. Are you saying that the positioning is kind of the way that you take people from point A to point B and how you get them there, or is it something different?
That's a great question, because I'm not a marketer by trade. And so maybe there's some specific definition that, I'd be missing here. But to me, there's kind of two layers of it. One is positioning in terms of like differentiation, like how are you what's your unique selling point, USP? To me, that's kind of an extra. I'm not as concerned about that, because I think for most people, if they saw your product first and it ticked the box, they probably were going to buy your product instead of someone else. Because again, if someone's in pain, do you really care what brand the Band-Aid is? Well, there you go. I mean, that's marketing right there. It's not a Band-Aid, it's a bandage. But I think that's sort of layered too. And the first thing to look at is the series of, like, the way we describe the positioning and kind of what we call, your offer. It's the series of steps in between. So all the different obstacles that you're going to face along the way on this journey from my shoulder hurts to my shoulder's healed. What are the different challenges or obstacles that I'm going to face? And how are you going to help support me in facing or overcoming those obstacles? And so if you can list them out and kind of map out the journey for me, it gives me confidence, which we talk about action thresholds. So this starts to get into sales. But that's really what I think of first and foremost when it comes to positioning, is how are you actually positioning not just yourself, but your offer, your actual product? Because again, we're trying to separate time from money. And this is the thing. It's not me Like, it's great if you know, like, and trust me, but it's more like, this still has to work for you. I don't want to just sell you. I'm trying to think of a better word that is PG friendly, but I'm not trying to. Yeah, yeah. If you're selling something that's not going to actually solve a problem, like, that's the first problem. Like, that, that's like, we need to, like, that's the thing to focus on, and that's how you can position yourself. Is like, does it work? Has it worked for other people? How do I know it's going to work for me?
No, that's great. And it's always challenging, it can be challenging, I think, when people go that top down approach, like you're talking about, where you just kind of, it's all up in your head and you're guessing and you're like, I think this sounds like, it's like, I always think of solutions, like, or ideas that people have, like, oh, I've got this idea for this thing. And it's like, most of those ideas are usually just solutions looking for problems to solve. It's like, here's a solution that can maybe solve a problem, but it doesn't really know what problem it wants to solve. So it's like looking for something to solve. And then you end up in this like doom loop or this hamster wheel of just like wasting energy.
100%. On top of that, I think that we get misguided by, like, the Zuckerbergs and the Steve Jobs in the media. Like, you see people that have these incredible ideas and they're incredible innovators and they're business titans. And it's like, it can happen. So, like, you can't even say that the top down approach it's not like, you can have a jackpot solution that just hits the ground running and hits on all cylinders, but it's so unlikely that I find most entrepreneurs are actually quite risk averse, even though we think of it as, like, weird culturally. I feel like we think of it as risky, but I'd much rather put my money on it. Like, I'd take a safe bet than for the fences. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Managing risk and finding risk that you can remove off the table is, in my opinion, like the big part of the game in entrepreneurship. Outside of obviously solving problems and serving a particular group of people in the market. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of some of the other things that you encompass in these other rules when it comes to leverage. And if you don't mind, maybe just recapping on those 6 rules. But I do want to talk about like the outsourcing piece and how that all plays in. But first off, like, let's just recap the 6 rules just so people understand what I'm talking about for leverage. And then we can talk about the outsource piece.
For sure. So yeah, the first one's desire. That one's non-negotiable. You have to have it. The second one is as close to non-negotiable as you can get. But technically it's not, but it is focus. That one's super important. I could go deeper into that one, but then the order is not as important here. It probably depends more on, like, the niche or the business, but then we have outsourcing labor, investing capital, enabling technology, and then promoting through media. And those are the 4 are actually, I think, first documented by Naval. I think is where I first heard it from. But when we thought a little bit deeper about it, we're like, that's not that's not the full picture. And I think a lot of people take for granted the first 2 rules, desire and focus. And then the others you can kind of mix. And it's really like all the ways to lengthen your lever and create more and more leverage over time. So they can kind of start to mix together and compound as well.
So reason I wanted to talk about the outsourcing labor piece is because there's this kind of like big solopreneur movement, right, that you see happening. At least I see it. I'm sure you do too. And it comes from, and I understand, I can empathize with this because I used to have a company. I had 18 employees, and it's like the thought of like going back to having to manage 18 employees, like I would rather do anything but that. And so I want to ask you about how you approach outsourcing labor, and how can somebody look at this in a way where it's like, it's having a team's not a bad thing. Like, is it like, it's not a negative thing. In fact, there's a lot of good that can come from having a team. So for all the solopreneurs out there, or even people who are in business that have teams and are maybe hesitant to want to grow their team, what would be the message that you would give to those people?
Yeah, it becomes arbitrage in a way. And so what I mean by that is, again, it's like the time for money. That's one of the, like, foundational ways to start to separate yourself from just trading time for money. And I think a trap that people fall into is thinking, if I if I delegate something, if I outsource something, I will just automatically have all of that time back. It doesn't quite work like that. Uh, there's, there's another kind of framework I could go into. It's called the 4Ds, but it kind of talks through um, like the different layers of that. But let's just assume that you get to the part where you have outsourced something. The types of things that we think about for outsourcing, again, because I guess I know there's two of us as co-founders, but I still almost would think of us as like a solopreneurs. I mean, I've been a solopreneur for 8+ years, so it's kind of my before that term even existed, as far as I know. That's how I've been operating, and we currently have VAs, and so that's extremely cheap labor for very like administrative, repetitive tasks, and that's really just things that we can't, or for whatever reason, don't automate with technology. So that skips to another rule. But if you can't do that, that's really kind of my go-to. Then it's okay. Here, how can I find someone to just do some simple things over and over again, keep it going, and then aside from that, we really personally, like at the stage we're at, like now in this business, we've looked for more kind of project based things. So it's like it's very focused. How do we solve this specific problem? Do we need like a consultation? Do we need someone who's got a specialism or expertise in a specific area, rather than like hiring, onboarding an employee and creating a full-time job? That's just not really our goal. And again, I think the only time that makes sense is if the VA thing becomes, there's more and more hours, or it's more and more complex, and you need a higher level of, competency, or it's not even competency. That's probably misspoke there. It's really just, the expertise in a specific domain, and the higher the level of expertise, the more expensive it's going to be, which would be more and more of a reason to bring it in-house rather than, bringing in a consultant. At that point, though, again, if it's project based, probably cheaper to just bring in a consultant than to hire a full-time employee. So those are the kind of like the layers and the angles that we think through. And by all means, like you can outsource and have a team, so to speak, without actually having any employees, and probably still technically fitting the definition of a solopreneur.
Yeah. It's kind of, I look at, they're very agile teams. It's like, they're, what is it? The term that they use now, the giga, I can't think of it. There's a word out there that describes kind of like the current labor situation, where you can onboard like temporary freelancers and they're project based, and it's not like you have to. There you go, gig economy. Thank you. It was like losing me. And it's interesting, in the world that we live in these days. I mean, back when I had my last business, the gig economy wasn't really as available, in terms of being able to, I mean, there was some opportunities, but not like it is today, where you have, Upwork and Fiverr, and, we're all online and we can communicate anywhere in the world, within seconds. And there's more infrastructure there to be able to outsource and pull people into positions to help you grow and scale. I was just curious to hear, and I love your answer and the way that you're thinking about it, in terms of kind of growing your team and not maybe getting so fixated on, the fact that it has to be like fixed employees, or, there can be VAs that can help with some of the more predictable tasks, and you can be flexible in that way.
Yeah, it's just, it's a job to get done. That's and if you can't clearly define the job to get done, then I don't think you're in a position to outsource.
Right. Yeah. Love that. Very cool. Okay. Well, we're getting near the end here, and I want to just kind of wrap up with some thoughts around, I guess the question is, why do they call you the Clarity Coach? And I think we can probably get a sense of that through this conversation, but I want to hear where you got that nickname.
Yeah, I think it's going on probably 18 months, something like that. I started having conversations. It was when I was transitioning out of my COO role. And I started doing my own market research. I started doing some coaching. Again, I mean, I've been trained as a coach. I just that word just kept coming up over and over again, clarity. And that was really the takeaway is people come in with this jumbled mess in the top down approach in their head. And I'll just ask, I'm just a curious person to begin with, but then mix that in with years of experience coaching and consulting and then even counseling as well, helping people kind of navigate their own thinking and face some unpleasantries maybe that they're feeling or thinking inside. That's just typically been the result that people get after a conversation, is feeling that sense of clarity and kind of knowing what their next steps are. And that's really important to me as well, is having the next steps piece, because if you're not taking action, if you're not taking the next steps, or if you don't even know what they are, I mean, you're not, I don't know how helpful that is. You're probably not going to do very well in business, because you have to have a bias towards action and execution. And I think it's really important. And again, that's why it's technically a rule of leverage, is if I were to lump it in with focus, is being clear on what you need to be doing. Because all the rest, what's that? Is it Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule?
Yeah.
It's like, what are the things that you need to do and focus on, and all the rest becomes garbage. And I find that the more talented people are, the more ideas and opportunities they just collect and kind of snowball over time in their lives. And eventually, a lot of times you get there by saying yes to everything, but then eventually you have to get better and better at saying no to more and more things. And so that to me is clarity, is cutting through the noise and throwing out the garbage and just saying, what is the priority? What are we focused on?
Have you read the book? It's called A Little Book of Clarity by Jamie Smart.
No, never heard of
it. You should read it. I'll send you a copy. When we get off, send me your mailing address. I'm going to send you a copy. I think you'd like it. Cool. There's what you said is pretty much exactly what he talks about in this book. And it's basically clarity. Like, clarity is actually like the natural state of our mind. And when somebody is not clear, it's like you basically, there's like a definition or equation. It's clarity equals capacity minus toxic thinking, or minus toxic, basically just noise that's in our head. So when you take like a glass of water and you put, dirt into it and you shake it up, it ends up turning into mud. But when you just like let it be and you let it sit still, eventually everything settles to the bottom and it gets clear. And that's kind of like how he thinks about, like, when it comes to clarity, like within the mind. So it's like you're getting rid of that toxicity. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, like toxic things that just aren't serving you. And then when you do that and you let everything settle, eventually it becomes clear as what needs to be in terms of what it is that you're doing in your life. And there's obviously, it's a really small little book too, but it's knowing like what are the right things to be doing versus just doing stuff. There's like as a business owner, you feel like there's a million things you should be doing all at the same time, and it's like, well, what are the actual things that are going to move the needle and what my business needs?
It's very much like that rocks in the glass.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
It's like a dorky little YouTube video, but yeah, rocks, pebbles, sand, and then like a beer on top in some versions. And it depends on like the order you put it in. But if it's all going to fit in the glass, for people that haven't seen the analogy or seen that video, but I think that's also, I'll share a quick anecdote in terms of like my own story. And where that, I used to be incredibly suspicious of the the online business world.
Yeah.
Ironic that I've been in it for so long now, but I didn't realize the clarity, the focus, the prioritization. I didn't really realize how important that was, and that's the game that. And that's when you start to get into the leverage game. That's the game that, a lot of people the level people are playing at is the ones that are, it's like that iceberg effect. The ones that are poking through the surface and you actually see the success.
Right.
They're highly focused and disciplined and structured. And, that those words don't feel so nice for a lot of people, but it's I think Jocko Willink says like discipline equals freedom. Like that's what creates the freedom. And I think it was 6 years that I was in business for myself before and I never cracked six figures in my business. And I just was always trying to figure things out on my own. I was very distracted. I was just saying yes to anything and everything. And the moment that I decided to invest in myself and get some guidance and some direction and actually like focused problem solving on like adding another piece, another asset into my business, that was the first year that I cracked six figures. And it was also, I think, my first 5-figure month. And so I know it doesn't always translate direct, like revenue is not always it's kind of a lagging indicator, but
yeah,
I think that's the clearest example I can give of how important it is to have a focused, whatever the thing is, like if it's a specific problem or it's like your business or even life as a whole, it's like, what direction are we headed in? And what's your evidence to support your game plan to actually like bring that to life? And then you can reassess and like you just keep, there's no finish line. You just keep going on the journey.
Yeah. It's the feedback loop the evidence being such a key part of that because that's your map, right? That's your reality. And that's what's going to show you the direction on getting where you want to go. So
yeah, there's a tree here. Don't walk into it. Come over. Yeah, exactly.
And that tree is real. And if you walk into it, it's not going to feel very good. So, be aware of those surroundings and what's actually happening in real time. Cool, man. Well, this is great. I appreciate your time. I want to give you an opportunity for anybody that's listening that wants to connect with you. What would be the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, probably LinkedIn or anywhere. Like type in Riley McGhee on social media. I'll probably pop up. The Riley McGhee on X, it's called now, or just Riley McGhee on LinkedIn. But then otherwise, we're like I said, we launched a podcast. It's called Change Champions. So that's on YouTube and Spotify and the platforms there. But yeah, that's where you can find me, and then you'll probably stumble across my business partner, Pedram Parismand is his full name. All the same places, and feel free to reach out, connect, shoot a message. Hopefully, I see it and get back to you because we're, like I said, pretty focused on our end as well. But that's where you can find us.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure to link it up in the show notes. Anybody wants to connect with Riley. Again, Riley, been great having you on the show. Appreciate all the value talking about leverage, getting clear and having that clarity on what the next step's going to be and taking the right steps and doing the work that's actually going to move the needle. So appreciate your contribution for being here.